Hello, my name is Nicole Rizzo, and welcome to my presentation on the assessment of capture techniques for nine-banded armadillos in undeveloped environments. The nine-banded armadillo is commonly just referred to as the armadillo and is a largely nocturnal and burrowing mesomammal that feeds primarily on insects. Armadillos can often be observed foraging for insects by digging shallow holes as shown on the right-hand side of the slide. Armadillos are often considered a nuisance because their digging disturbs human constructions and they are known reservoirs for the Chagas disease pathogen and often carry leprosy. Due to their status as pests and disease reservoirs, it is important for wildlife professionals to study armadillos. Armadillos are difficult to study because they can be very difficult to capture, as supported by Bergman and Lowry. This stems from the fact that armadillos use multiple burrows at once, which makes it difficult to assess which burrow is currently in use. Also, they are mostly nocturnal, which makes them difficult to see, and they are insectivorous and have poor eyesight, which makes it difficult to lure them into traps. To find the capture technique that best addresses these obstacles, I have chosen 4 techniques that are currently used to capture armadillos, and I have identified their major pros and cons. The first method is hand capture using long-handled dip nets, as described by Gammons. With researchers on foot carrying long-handled dip nets in a spotlight, undeveloped terrain is scanned for armadillos during their active hours, and the animals are pursued on foot and netted. This method has proven to be successful, as seen in the photos I took during this fieldwork. However, the problems associated with this method are significant. Searching undeveloped terrain can be time-consuming, and if repeatedly done, can influence armadillo behavior. Additionally, armadillos are difficult to see in the dark and when they're active. Finally, undeveloped terrain can be difficult to navigate on foot in a stealthy manner, and if the armadillo must be pursued, there is often little room for such pursuit in heavily wooded environments. The next method is baited live trapping. With this method, wire cage traps are set in areas that have high active armadillo damage. Ideally, the traps would be set at the mouth of the burrow and baited with crickets and worms. These baits were identified as the best attractants for armadillos in an experimental study, but no attractants have been identified as suitable bait for trapping armadillos. The benefits of this study, or of this method, include the potential for increased trapping success and less labor because setting traps is significantly easier than scanning undeveloped environments on foot. The problems with this technique are low capture success, as demonstrated in the Gammon study, an increased potential for capturing bycatch, and a lack of effective trapping attractants, as previously mentioned. Additionally, it can be difficult to identify active armadillo burrows to set traps in front of, and this is because armadillos often dig multiple burrows at once, and this is discussed in the Artiega publication listed in my references. The third method is the unbaited live trap with a drift fence approach, and this method is commonly used in residential areas with active armadillo damage, but differs from the previous method because the traps are unbaited and they are complemented with drift fences that lead from the mouth of suspected active burrows to the trap. The major pro of this method is the increased effectivity with the use of drift fences. However, capture success is low because the armadillo is not really motivated to enter the trap, and the idea instead is that the armadillo will wander into the fence and unknowingly follow the fence into the trap. Perhaps the greater con may be the lack of suitability of this method in undeveloped environments that have variable terrain and numerous burrows that make it difficult for researchers to set up successful drift fences. The final method is using both armadillo tracking dogs and wire cage traps. With dogs, armadillos can be tracked to the burrow they're using, and a fence can be set up that prevents the armadillos from escaping and forces them into the trap. This method provides, it improves the research quality by reducing human bias and increases the sample size, but the problems with this method involve restrictions associated with using tracking dogs. Ideal weather and specific times of day are required, and it can be very difficult to balance the search efforts with only a few dogs. And then once the armadillos are located, it may not always be practical to set up fences in undeveloped terrain. However, with all 4 techniques considered, the most suitable armadillo capture technique when sampling in undeveloped environments seems to be using tracking dogs and wire cage traps. This technique, despite its flaws, is the only one that increases capture success to a degree that would create a sample size large enough to conduct a reasonable study. Without dogs, researchers would spend like an exorbitant amount of time capturing only a few individuals, and the cons associated with this technique can be more easily overcome than the other techniques I discussed. And with that, here's a list of my references. Thank you very much for watching, and please leave any questions you have for me in the comments down below.